What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the ACSA Dynasty here within Maximum Football 2020. This is John J. Gavin on the mic, and today we are here with the preview going into Week 4 of this inaugural season of the American Collegiate Sports Association. Today what we're going to be doing is checking out the newest top 25 as well as the most recent recruits that did end up signing at various programs, and then finally take a look at the games to watch out for this upcoming week, and even a breakdown of the conference standings as we are a quarter of the way through this season. So should be a good one. Make sure you smash that like button as well as hit subscribe if you do happen to be brand new to the channel and like what you see. With all that being said though, let's go ahead and jump into this most recent top 25 poll. Starting off, we have the top 8 here of this brand new ACSA poll. Biggest thing to notice is that Warwick actually drops a few spots down to number 6. Mississippi A&M and Coastal Alabama passing him up. So we got 5 teams from the Super South Conference taking the top 5 slots. But then after that, Chattanooga Tech falls out of the top 8. They fell down to number 9, and Indiana Ford and the Whitetails actually are the biggest riser in this week's top 25 poll. They started off last week ranked number 11 in the nation, and they improved to number 8 in the nation now. Join this list. Meanwhile, Alabama Hoover still sitting at the very top at number 1, and same thing goes for DeKalb A&M. They are maintaining their current position, sitting at number 7 in the nation. Speaking of teams like Chattanooga Tech, here is the next part of the top 25. Chattanooga Tech, like I said, did fall to number 9. And then other things to notice is that Eastern Pennsylvania does fall to number 14 in the most recent ACSA poll. They actually had the biggest drop of this week while maintaining their current status as a top 25 team in the nation. Texas Catholic and Herbert Hoover, despite impressive victories, are going to hold their place for right now, staying at number 15 and number 16 in the nation, respectively. Detroit State and Southfield switch spaces. Southfield falling 2 spots, Detroit State improving by 2 spots. And then finally, Bluffton Tech and Southern New Mexico. Don't see much movement, but they did each move up 1 singular spot. Bluffton Tech now sitting as the number 12 team in the nation. Meanwhile, Southern New Mexico now sits as the number 13 team representing the Big Southwest Conference. Finally, we have the final part of this ACSA Top 25 poll going into Week 4 of the ACSA Dynasty. Not a lot of movement here, but there are a couple newcomers to the ACSA Top 25. David Crockett and University of Iroquois East making their first appearance in the ACSA Top 25. David Crockett coming in at number 24 in the nation, and the Iroquois from the Big North Conference representing that final top 25 spot, now sitting in at number 25 in the nation. Meanwhile, Team Tacoma State and Florida Tech both leave the ACSA Top 25. Florida Tech taking their second loss of the season after being ranked as high as number 7. A second loss knocked them out. Meanwhile, Tacoma State started off unranked and after 2 straight wins was up to number 21, but they fell right back down outside the top 25 thanks to an upset loss. Other than that, not too much movement going on as both Spokane Tech, Phoenix State, Sugar Land State, and Hiawatha are all teams that did stay in place, none of them moving up or downward. Meanwhile, A.J. Moore Academy, Bayou State, and Hayes all improved by 2 slots, taking those number 21 through 23 spots in the ACSA Top 25. But now that we made it through the Top 25 poll, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the notable recruits to sign with various schools and institutions throughout the ACSA. Now, we had our biggest signing week to date so far, as we had a grand total of 13 guys. It was so many guys that they couldn't all fit in one picture. So this time around, I'm going to be showing 2 pictures, showing first the most notable of top 100 recruits to sign, and then show another picture with not as notable but still really good guys that can make impacts right away. So with that being said, here are 7 of the more notable guys to sign. Coastal Alabama is actually the biggest winner of this recruiting week, as J.J. Comer, Dwayne Swain, who is the #1 defensive back, and Sean McAlee all go to Coastal Alabama, giving them 3 5-star recruits that signed with the program in the course of one single week. Now, Capital of Tennessee also did some really good work getting 2 5-star guys, as well as UAH and Southern Alabama State also securing stronger recruiting classes, getting the #12 and #17 overall prospects respectively. South Alabama State and UAH really getting their recruiting classes very well put together. Now on to the second half of more notable recruits to sign this week. We have the lower end of 5-star recruits in DeAndre Flott, who's #21 overall prospect, but the best tight end in this class, also signed with the Capital of Tennessee, making it the third 5-star recruit this week to sign with the program. Meanwhile, for the 4-stars, University of Alabama Hoover and Bluffton Tech each get multiple 4-star prospects to commit to their programs over the course of this week. And Central Georgia A&M does get their first signee, defensive lineman Geno Jones, who is a #29 overall prospect, but the 5th best defensive lineman of this ACSA high school class, does sign with Central Georgia A&M. It is the first prospect to sign with the Central Georgia program in the course of this inaugural season, as this will be the 13 guys that did sign within the top 100 over the course of this week. So with the more updated recruits that did sign over the past week, let's take a look at the brand new recruiting rankings that were just released by the ACSA. Capital of Tennessee still has the best recruiting class, now having 6 5-star prospects, in addition to 1 4-star recruit joined the squad for next season. Coastal Alabama, though, is closing the gap already with 4 5-star guys and a 4-star guy as well, really closing the gap on them. Same thing with the University of Alabama Hoover. Not the flashiest guys have signed so far, but they do have 5 total top 100 prospects, 3 of them being 5-star guys and another 2 being 4-star guys that can also help out right away. On the other hand, we do like to welcome Central Georgia A&M with their first 4-star guy, and will be carrying the #7 recruiting class in the ACSA. Although Bluffton Tech does jump to #4, getting multiple 4-star guys, they leap ahead of Southern Alabama State, who doesn't really have much depth behind the 2 5-star guys that they did sign. Mississippi A&M and Chattanooga Tech are also 2 teams that do have 4 or 5-star prospects committed to the program. However, they were not able to get any new recruits this week, at least within the top 100. So Mississippi A&M does fall to #6 in the ACSA recruiting rankings, while Chattanooga Tech falls down to #8 in that same ranking. Alright, so following that recruiting update, it is now time to take a look at the conference standings for each individual conference in the ACSA. We are at the quarter-way point now, so it's good to see where each teams are at. The Super South Conference does get a lot of crap for being an overrated conference, but they have lived to the billing overall. Many of the teams are still undefeated after 3 weeks. Central Georgia A&M and UGBC are also former top 25 teams, that could definitely call back in as well. Meanwhile, Erlanger might be the worst team in this conference, but that's no shame because they're still sitting at 2-1. The Super South, for all the crap they're given, may look like one of the better conferences in the ACSA. On the other side of that coin, we have the Sunshine Conference, who has really struggled through non-conference play. Many of the teams are still looking for their very first win of the inaugural season, although there are a few bright spots. Northern Virginia is still sitting at 2-1, have looked very good in the course of this season. Actually could be 3-0, as they only loss is to a 10-7 defeat to Capital of Tennessee, who's ranked in the top 5, so no shame in that. Virginia Christian and Lynchburg A&M have also secured victories in non-conference play so far. Look for one of those 2 teams to also compete in the Sunshine Championship game when it's all said and done. Up next, we have the standings for the National Athletic Conference, probably the best group of 5 conference in the ACSA. The Knights from Clinton University are the only undefeated team left in this conference, sitting at 3-0. Also has multiple top 25 wins to date. I wouldn't be shocked if they made an appearance in the top 25 poll at some point this season, but they aren't the only bright spot. The Vienna Patriots, Beckett Ridge, and St. John Jakes are all teams that have looked pretty good so far this season, and I think the Knights will be, definitely go to the conference championship game. But it will be interesting to see which of these three teams do make it, as I see this is the most solidified tier behind Clinton, New York. Other than that, Philadelphia 10 got their first win, St. Louis Wilkes-Barre Scranton, so this is a solid conference despite being in the group of 5. After that, we have the Atlantic Shore Conference, and it seems like two contenders are certainly emerging. The Warwick Rebels are an obvious one, but Herbert Hoover has looked pretty good too. Now coming in number 16 in the nation and have looked slightly more impressive than Warwick, despite not having the national reputation around the ACSA. Other teams to watch out for is always Delaware at Kent. They were ranked in the top 25, but because of some favoritism fell off despite, not losing a single game this season. And the Hanover Canucks and University of Mid-Atlantic are also sitting at 3-0 so far. Look for those two teams to potentially be a dark horse to compete for the Atlantic Shore Conference Championship. On the flip side of the coin, Charlotte State and Florida Tech have also been pretty disappointing, starting off in the top 25, but after starting off 1-2, are now sitting towards the bottom end of the Atlantic Shore Conference standings, at least through these first 3 weeks of the season. Keeping it in that Power 5 tier, we now have the Big Southwest Conference standings after 3 weeks of football. And pound for pound, this could be the best conference in college football, at least for the upper echelon. There's only 10 teams in this conference, but 6 of them are ranked in the top 25. Really, the only thing that's really holding them back as a conference is New Mexico Tech. They haven't secured a win yet, and they haven't looked good either, only averaging 6 points per game offensively. Wentzville is also no slouch, and Nazareth and the Clinton Indians from Clinton College, are no pushovers either. Despite not being ranked, they're also ranked in the top, or they're also undefeated, so this could be one of the more interesting races to watch out for in the ACSA. Be interesting to see who makes it to the Big Southwest Conference Championship game when it's all said and done, because there's a lot of things that need to be separated right now. Moving on to my personal favorite conference, we have the Big North Conference, which is probably the only conference right now that stands up to the Super South realistically. This is a conference, same amount of losses so far in non-conference play and has the same amount of teams. They just don't necessarily get the credit that, the Super South Conference necessarily does, although there's still a lot of football left to sort out. Bluffton Tech looks like the most dominant, but there's a lot of other teams in this conference that have looked really good, including Iowa Institute of Technology and Northern New York, surprisingly. Lincoln Fighting Salt have also gone off to a 3-0 start. This could be the best conference in college football at the end of the day, and whoever wins this conference will be going to the college football playoff. I am calling it right now. Back in the group of 5 tier, we now have the Stars and Stripes Conference, which has, I think this might be the worst conference in college football right now. There's 14 teams and only 4 non-conference victories so far. The only bright spot so far is the Oxford Chargers, which are sitting above 500, currently sitting at 2-1 this season. And Louisiana Central and Las Vegas have also scored non-conference victories, with Louisiana Central actually keeping it close in their previous game last week. I believe it was against Wentzville, so they could easily be 2-1 as well. Other than that, there certainly hasn't been any bright spots overall for this conference, and I would go to say that this is, the worst conference in college football. The 3 teams I think will compete will obviously be Oxford, Louisiana Central, and finally the Las Vegas Aces, competing for 2 spots in the Stars and Stripes Conference Championship game. Up next, we have the Walmart brand version of the Big North Conference. We now have the Midwest Conference now on deck. And this is what the standings are looking like after 3 weeks. The conference has definitely struggled, although there are a few teams to watch out for. Central Tech particularly has been able to score a top 25 upset victory, but who else is going to show up as that second team to challenge Central Tech? Could it be University of Washington Kennesaw, Vermont, or Eastern Wisconsin at Port Washington? All teams sitting at 1-2. And then hopefully, records start looking better once they get into non-conference or actual conference play, because right now it's not looking very good. Although there are more teams that have at least scored one victory, so I'm not going to sit here and say that they're the worst conference in college football. At least not yet anyways, although there's still plenty of football left to be played. Traveling over to the West Coast now, we now have the Rocky Mountain Conference standings after 3 weeks. The Alaska Beluga Whales are certainly in the mix of things. We knew that Lake Oswego and Pacific Tech would be in the mix, but the Alaska Beluga Whales, man, are certainly making their mark early on. Despite being 1-2, they actually looked more impressive than Pacific Tech, although it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that over the course of this season. Lake Oswego doing exactly what we thought, and Pacific Tech actually disappointing a little bit. I know they played against Power 5 teams, but you expected a little bit better than 1-2 given the type of talent that is on their roster currently. And then of course we don't have many surprises. Maybe Colorado Tech being down a little downward, losing badly to Anchorage Tech too. You hate to see that at 0-3. Although they're not the worst team in the Rocky Mountain Conference, and I think once Rocky Mountain play starts, they will bounce back eventually, but look towards Lake Oswego and, Pacific Tech to compete. On the other hand, the Big Pacific Conference has really stood up for itself. An underrated conference for sure, as there's still only one ranked team. There's a lot of good teams in here, man. Seattle and Burrow State have certainly impressed. Spokane Tech has done its thing, and Ron Burgundy has a very intriguing offense for sure. On the flip side of the coin, Oaksterdam has been a little disappointing. I know they're sitting at 3-0 so far. However, they have not been that great offensively. I think at their full potential, I still think that they are the best team in the Big Pacific Conference. But as of right now, they haven't lived up to that standard. Nova teams that also just took their first loss is teams like Tacoma State, Amazon, and University of California, Calabasas, with Anchorage Tech bringing up the rear, sitting at 1-2, only beating a pretty tough Colorado Tech squad from the Rocky Mountain Conference. So after taking a look at the conference standings, let's now go ahead and take a look at the 10 games that will be shown here on the channel over the course of the week. Now, it will be divided into 3 parts because there are no primetime games to watch out for, at least no top 25 matchups. So 10 randomly selected games have been chosen, and it will be divided into 3 parts, with part 1 showing on Monday, part 2 will be on Wednesday, then part 3 to round out week 4 action will be shown on Friday. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look now at the 10 games that will be shown over the course of this week. Starting with the very first matchup being the Beckett Ridge Farmers for the National Conference, going on the road to play against the Amazon Delivery Boys in what should be a very interesting matchup between 2 teams that should be ranked in the top 25, but that is currently not the case. Still should be a very good matchup to watch out for going forward. The second game of that will be shown here on the channel is the Spring Creek Moose, actually going on the road to play against the Northern New York Freeze, who are off to a very surprising 3-0 start. Thought they would stumble a little bit in non-conference play, but that simply has not been the case so far. It will be interesting to see if they can improve to 4-0. This will be the second game of part 1 that will be shown this Monday. And then for the final part of part 1, we have the Syracuse State Lakers from the Rocky Mountain Conference, still searching for their first win, and they'll have a tough task dealing with the Detroit State Pit Bulls, who come into this week ranked number 10 in the entire nation. This will be the finale for part 1 that will be shown this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then to start off Wednesday, we have part 2, starting off with the Houston Tech Red Bears, going on the road to play against the Lincoln Fighting Salt, who are also sitting at 3-0 so far this season, and they'll look to improve to 4-0, while the Houston Tech Red Bears are still searching for their first win of the season before they go into conference play in the Stars and Stripes Conference, which will be starting next week as well. After that, we have the Maui Piranhas going on the road to play against the Hebrew University of California, who is currently sitting at 2-1 and look to get some more positive momentum going into Big Pacific play. whereas Maui is one of the 6 unaffiliated teams, I should say, in the ACSA, and look to get a Power 5 victory, trying to get back to 500 here in the inaugural season. We'll see who comes out on top in what should be an interesting matchup, part of Wednesday's quadruple header. Following that game, we have George Fox Eugene Bruins going on the road to go up against the number 15 team in the nation in the Texas Catholic Gladiators. Texas Catholic with aspirations of not only competing for the conference championship, but maybe go to a college football playoff in this inaugural ACSA season. Here on Maximum Football 2020, we'll say if George Fox Eugene can play as the spoilers. And then finally, to wrap up part 2 of week 4 action, we have the Darden Jaguars from the Stars and Stripes Conference looking for their very first win, and hopefully they can get it done, because they will be going up against a current Big North bottom feeder in the Rugby Boilermakers, but they certainly aren't no pushovers either. Watch out for that as the final game for part 2, which will be dropping on Wednesday. So now, starting with Friday, we start with a treat for you guys, as Southern Alabama State, coming in at number 2 in the nation, will be hosting the Brooklyn Wolves, and that will be the game that will start off this Friday. This will be the first game that will be shown for that particular episode. We'll see what Southern Alabama State is all about, because if the season ended today, Southern Alabama State would be going to the inaugural college football playoff here in Maximum Football 2020. Following that game, we have the Virginia Christian Saints looking to pull an upset on a Power 5 squad, as Florida Tech is still looking to recover. Was as high as number 7, but they have fallen off a cliff thanks to 2 consecutive losses. Don't look to get back on track, and hopefully this game against Virginia Christian is the game that will get them going in the correct direction once again. Either way, one of those teams will be going to back to 500. And then for the final game being shown for this week, we have the Las Vegas Aces going on the road to play against the Charlotte State Kings, another former top 25 team that has somewhat lost its way from the get-go. We'll see if Charlotte State can pull this one out, or if Las Vegas will do the unthinkable, get the upset, and then go ahead and improve to 2-2 prior to Stars and Stripes Conference play. So with that being said, that will end today's ACSA video, at least going into week 4. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and please smash that like button, as well as hit subscribe if you have to be new, as we're on the road to 1K as the recording of this video. In the meantime, I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day out there. Take care, everybody.